very much, Mr. Speaker. Your Honor, I want to begin by thanking the Honorable Minister Ashley Singh for crafting and presenting this budget. Ashley Singh was coveted by international financial institutions across this world. His service was sought out, and he went and he served as a citizen of the world. And so we're very happy to have him back here with his expertise. And we see, Your Honor, how that expertise unfolds in this budget titled Steadfast Against All Challenges, Resolute in Building Our One Guyana. Mr. Speaker, we're all members of this House, and we're expected to come here with some level of dedication and knowledge and commitment. But simply being in here does not entitle us to claim those qualities. We must serve as such. And just now, I have failed to hear in this entire debate, in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, when education around the world has been the most topical, just beneath health issue, any sensible debate. We're in the House and we're expected to come here. We have different policies and ideologies and debate them. And we are diametrically opposed from the APNU, AFC, PNCR, whatever they're styling themselves now, on particular issues. They are a party who believe in taxing the nation into prosperity. So they apply 200 taxes. Defend that, own it. That's what you're here for. We are a party who believe that we can bring goodness to the people of this country without taxing the ordinary man. And so we remove 200 taxes that you placed on the backs of Guyanese that cost the people of this country $60 billion. Last year, in the measures that the President and the Minister of Finance announced, we saved the people of this country $65 billion. The APNU-AFC does not philosophically believe in cash grants. Come here, own it, defend it. There's no debate around issues like that, sir. There was a lot of ad hominem attacks. Who member they don't like, who hairstyle they don't like, who in lipstick and match who on, who hair weaving and match who on. That kind of thing is useless, senseless, and heavily beneath the caliber that is expected of this House, especially in this hard time when we must all climb out of the consequences of COVID together or perish together. The APNU-AFC does not believe in the opening of schools. You heard it here. Close down the schools. So one member, the honorable gentleman, Mr. Sears, yesterday, is saying it's so hard for children in the hinterland whose parents are already not as highly educated to do online learning. And then you hear from the honorable member today that we must close all the schools. Close them. The APNU-AFC philosophically appears not to believe in the vaccination of the population. And I'm going to say in the vaccination of the population, not in vaccination because they all went and took it. So clearly they believe in vaccination, but they have done everything they can to discourage parents and children from taking vaccines. And that's a philosophical difference from what we have. We believe vaccines work. We believe that we should spend every moment in this time encouraging people and administering vaccines. So we have philosophical, ideological differences in this House that should be debated. If you have a position, come here and defend it. Don't waffle. But I haven't heard anything in that regard, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is the If we believe in the Ministry of Education that this budget theme was made for us. Steadfast against all challenges, and there's never been a time in the history of this world that the education sector and the livelihood of children and the survival of children have been more challenged than at this present moment. And if we don't take decisive action, it's going to prolong into the rest of their life. Mr. Speaker, when we came to office in 2020, the honorable member who has dishonorably left her seat just after she has spoken, breaching a parliamentary practice that all the honorable members over there have been doing repeatedly in this last week, came here and spoke about all these high ideals about what should happen and what should not happen. The honorable member was occupying the chair of the Minister of Education, and the people and children of this country depended on her for 5 months. 5 months, not a single intervention from the APNU AFC when they closed schools to look after the rig attempt. Not a single intervention. Mr. Speaker, we closed schools here in March of 2020, just like most countries around the world. At that time, 109 countries had endured countrywide school closures. By September of 2020, just after the honorable member left office, only 40 countries around the world were still under countrywide closure. By November of 2020, 30 countries, countrywide closure. Guyana was not one of those countries. We had partially opened. By June of 2021, 22 countries with full closure. By September of 2021, 22 countries more with closure. By November of 2021, 8 countries in the world had their entire school population closed. By January of 2022, 3 countries in this world remain closed, with their school doors closed. This backward APNU AFC, without any care for the children they come here and cry for, want us to close back the schools. Why? Tell me why, when teachers, the good teachers of this country, are going to school and teaching the children, when the APNU AFC themselves have admitted that our internet infrastructure does not allow for children to get the full benefit of online classes. So, Mr. Speaker, our reopening has been very consistent with how the world behaved during this pandemic. We, on November 9th, 2020, partially opened for the higher grades. Then by June 2021, we opened for grade 6. Then by September 2021, we opened for everybody, but on a rotational basis. January 3rd, 2022, we opened from 8 to 11 because we had then vaccinated all our offered the vaccine to all our high school children. We had to be resolute. We had to close our minds to the noise and do what was best for our children. You know what was the APNU's position and AFC's position? Up to 2 weeks ago, they issued a statement, close all the schools. That was your response to COVID, close all the schools. Mr. Speaker, on the 24th of January, this article appeared on the internet, and I've done a copy for all the members of the House. 100 weeks into the pandemic, the importance of keeping schools open and investing in learning recovery programs. It was written by Stefania Gianni Robert and Jenkins Jaime Saavedra. We are heading toward the 100th week of education disruption around the world. On average, each country has experienced 20 full weeks of school closures, plus another 20 weeks of average partial closures. School children have lost an estimated 2 trillion hours and counting of in-person instruction since the onset of COVID-19. The impact of school closures on learning has been devastating. Even before COVID-19, the world was grappling with a learning crisis, with more than half of 10-year-olds in low and middle-income countries being unable to read or understand a simple story. That number is now expected to rise to 70%. Real data confirms that students have incurred substantial learning losses during the pandemic in countries from all income groups. The recent World Bank, UNICEF, and UNESCO report, The State of the Global Education Crisis, A Path to Recovery, compiles studies on learning loss from 28 countries. The report shows that school closures affected girls, children from disadvantaged backgrounds, those living in rural areas, children with disabilities, and children from ethnic minorities more than their peers. The youngest learners were often left behind in remote learning initiatives, as were children experiencing dire humanitarian crises prior to the pandemic. The staggering effects of school closure reach beyond learning. This generation could lose a combined total of 17 trillion in lifetime earnings in present value, a sharp rise from the predicted 10 trillion loss last year. The costs of closing schools outweigh the risks of keeping schools open. Evidence suggests that with the strategies to minimize transmission in place, schools are not a driver of community transmission, nor are they high-risk environments for staff. Mitigation measures like improved ventilation, mask wearing, distancing when appropriate can help reduce transmission in schools. And Mr. Speaker, the report went on to recommend strongly that countries invest in learning recovery. And it said very clearly, collectively, we need to make education and learning a political priority. We must reopen schools, keep them open, and support learning recovery. We cannot afford to lose this generation of kids. Our future depends on it. All children back to schools, recovering learning losses, and preparing and supporting teachers. And this article, sir, came in anticipation of the International Day of Education on January 24th, where UNESCO, UNICEF, and the World Bank co-hosted the webinar, Mission, Recovering Education, What is Needed to Avoid Losing a Generation. But we don't need to rely, Mr. Speaker, on international data. Right here in Guyana, for all the people asking for schools to keep closed, right here in Guyana, in 2020, 11,944 children registered to write CXC, 494 were absent. In 2021, out of 9,823, 553 are absent. You are risking losing these kids forever. Here, sir, the highest number the ministry has recorded, more than 70 children pregnant. And Mr. Speaker, a particular secondary school reported yesterday that while its grade 10 has 130 students registered on roll, 5 have registered for CSEC. So when you come here with your wild, politically motivated calls to close the schools, understand that you are harming and hurting the children of this nation. And you could do that if you want, but we will not let you. We will not let you. We are standing here for the children of Guyana, and we will stand in front of your harm and protect them from it. And any other affiliate or acolyte you bring to represent that position, it is backward, it is useless, it cannot serve the people of this country. And so, Mr. Speaker, what was our response? What is our response to the COVID closures and the learning losses? How are we investing through this budget in learning recovery? Because that's what we're doing. And when the honorable member stands there, it's very hard to be harsh with her, given that her own party is not being very kind to her right now. When the honorable member stands there and says she wants a plan, the plan has been defined and outlined in many different documents. But I will say this, under the honorable member's tenureship, ministership, that is the first time since 1993 that this country went without a published education sector plan. We published it last year, 5 years after you were out, 5 years after you couldn't do it. No COVID, no floods, and even prior to the hurried attempt to rig an election. Still couldn't get it done. So, Mr. Speaker, how are we investing in learning recovery? That article that everybody is going to get on their desk you'll see that one of the things they recommend, we're way ahead of the game. One of the things they recommend is that we consolidate the curriculum, that we shave off things that you do not need and keep the things you need for the appropriate level. This country, Guyana, engaged international experts and our local experts, and we've already done that. What we have to make sure happens is that it's being implemented in the schools. We've trained more than 1,200 teachers without our money to implement that consolidated curriculum. Mr. Speaker, we bought textbooks, and you will see in the report that they're saying give as much resources to children. For the first time in the history of Guyana, the grade 6 children had all the textbooks they needed in 2021. And in 2022, all primary students will have all the textbooks they need because this budget is providing money for us to buy that, as well as for most of the secondary population. Mr. Speaker, we wrote our own reader series. I was on the floor of this house begging on behalf of the nation that the reader series be completed. We started it in 2015. We published readers 1, 2, and 3 by 2015, 18 months later, and the Honorable Minister and her coalition decided that wasn't important. So they dropped the entire publication, replaced it with nothing, and come here now and tell us we must do for our children, all loftily. You can't come here and talk service. You got to perform. Children must feel the service, sir, and they will through this budget because we will give them their textbooks, and that is an investment in the learning recovery. Mr. Speaker, we bought 2 textbooks from a local author called Jonathan Ben. He wrote 2 books that only private school children were getting, Social Studies Made Easy and Science Made Easy, and we bought the rights from him and we gave it to all our public school children, all. Mr. Speaker, we are investing in this budget in 11,000 devices, 11,000 tablets and flash drives, and it was rather disappointing to hear 2 members from the hinterland come to say, don't bother buy it because them ain't got electricity there. That is so backward and selfish while you sit down with your parliamentary approved tablets in your laps. We don't have to wait until all the conditions are right. In any event, before the end of 2022, all primary and nursery schools across this country will be connected with electricity and the learning channel, as well as cable, to be able to access that channel. So electricity will not be a problem. Mr. Speaker, we are investing in learning recovery by expanding the learning channel. In the article that you'll see on your desks, one of the things they're suggesting should happen strongly is extra tuition and extra hours, what we call lessons. The government of Guyana, the PPPC government of Guyana, is preparing itself to give the entire school population lessons through the learning channel, through the radio. This budget is preparing us for that. So when you come here and say you don't know how this budget is going to help with learning loss, there's no line item named learning loss. It's the policies and programs we have put in place that will help recovery, that will fund the recovery of the children in this country. Mr. Speaker, school feeding, that is an investment in the recovery of learning lost. And I heard the honorable member just said she was very proud of her record. And I really want to remind her what that record is. The other honorable member who began by saying David Arthur Granger had won the election, thereby discrediting everything else she said. But let's repeat what she said, that the 5B program was far more superior to any cash grant. The honorable member who just spoke said $40,000 it was saving somebody from Barakaro every month. We came into office, there were 12 buses on the Granger BBB program, 12. The student population in this country is close to 200,000, 12. There were at one point, before they broke down and so on, 21. So at the best, at the highest point of your BB program, you had 21 buses to fetch the children of this country. And you think that is a superior program. Here's the thing, we're not stopping the bus program. In fact, we're reinvesting in the bus program. Bartica, for example, is getting a brand new, well, Region 7, 36-seater. We're keeping that program and we're still giving the cash grant. That's how much we love children. Well, Mr. Speaker, let's talk about this equitable distribution and how everybody got the school feeding. Because you would recall that we were told in 2016 that the cash grant was being abolished so that it could go into school feeding. School feeding was replacing the cash grant. And you heard the honorable member just now, very lyrical, from Lethem to Linden, from Babu John to Coven John. Babu John never got anything. 3 schools in Region 6. 3, 1, 2, 3 schools in Region 6 benefited from the breakfast program. The same region whose parents you threw out of work. You know how many benefited in Linden? 0. They didn't start the program in Linden. You know how many benefited in Region 2? 0. They never started the program in Region 2. We this year, Mr. Speaker, you know how many benefited in Region 5? 6. You know how many benefited on the East Bank? 0. None. Not. This year, Mr. Speaker, while we give the cash grant, we are also expanding the school feeding program, and $2 billion is being invested in that. So when you come here with your lofty ideas about how you're proud of this, you're proud of your school feeding record, you should hang your head in shame. Shame. And Mr. Speaker, I would withdraw shame, and you should hang your head in sorrow for what you did to this country's children, in sorrow. And you know, in 2017, this Ministry of Education returned $2 billion to the consolidated. They can't spend it. Out all the time doing all kinds of doctorates and scholarships and everything else but the people's work. But the people's work. And that $2 billion could have done that cash grant and more. So, Mr. Speaker, we come to the cash grant as we're talking about it. This APNUAFC has had all kinds of, not personal, because everybody in here who was entitled collected. So it's not a personal conviction. If you feel strongly that cash grant is a bad investment, don't take it. How you line up first and poke in the line to get it first? Mr. Speaker, we've heard the complaints. The cash grant was given to East Indians only because, you know, the race talk got to happen for it to be legitimate. And that was debunked when every other race knew that they came there. We didn't ask them. We didn't even look up when we were signing them up. We gave them it. The people debunked that for you. The cash grant was given only to PPP supporters. No way you could support that. The crowds were gathered and they shouldn't gather. Parents did not use the money on their children, and this one here really bothers me. It's like a deadbeat dad, and any lawyer here who went to court looking out for mothers would know. They go to court and you know what they say? We don't want to give her money for our children because she can spend it on her hair and nails. Your eyes pass women. Your eyes pass women. And all of you over there who don't want the people to get the cash grant and you want us to give vouchers, you are like deadbeat dads. You can't look after this country's children, and you should never be given the responsibility to look after this country's children. And the people will make sure that you never have the power again until you reform yourself, which you don't seem like you plan to do, to even sniff an opportunity to look after them again. Mr. Speaker, yesterday...
Honorable Minister, please refer to the honorable members as comrade or honorable members. And I was wondering if you included the Deputy Speaker in all of you over there.
Sir, I think all the members here have legitimately attached to their seat honorable. I see a lot of people using it for their personal name, but you're an honorable MP. You have to earn being an honorable John Doe. But I will say without reservation that whenever I fail to say honorable, please attach it for me. Mr. Speaker, yesterday, Gordon Mosley ran a very popular Facebook news person, ran a poll, and he asked how many people would like the cash grant in a voucher, like the deadbeat politicians are suggesting, and how many want cash. 420 people, 7 people said they want cash, and 60 said they want it in vouchers. Of the 60, I'd be happy to see how many of them actually have children, and how many of them are themselves deadbeat dads. We listened to people. Before we implemented this program in 2014, we traveled this country, and there are archived photographs and news reports about it, and we asked people, how do you want this? Do you want us to give it to you in the bank? Do you want it in a voucher like the uniform grant? Do you want it on a card? What's the thing she was saying? Some debit card? Do you want that? The people said, no, give me my cash. Because there are different ways, different things I can buy to look after my children. And most of the people, well, entire families benefited from this. But it was the mothers who turned up to pick this up. So if you are going to suggest that mothers do not know how to spend money on their children, then we are going to stand in your way when you try to insult them further. You can't do that. And when Mr. Ramjatan stands here and says, honorable member, and suggests that there's massive corruption, he must tell us how. We got the register from the school, which is a legal document that has to be collected in a certain way every day, and the head teacher had to check it, the education department had to check it, the parent had to come with an ID or a power of attorney or an authorization and sign as collecting. Where is the massive corruption? And if you're going to claim corruption, please know that is not me. I didn't give a single dollar. I arranged it, and the government made sure it was in the budget. But it was people like Mr. Dineshwar Jai Prashad, honorable MP, that spent days of his life while you were lolled off in front of a TV, honorable member, sharing out this cash grant to parents who needed it. You would remember the APNU calling on teachers not to turn up to share out this grant through one of their affiliates, that the teachers mustn't handle money. And you know what the teachers did? Because if there are people in this country who know how that cash grant could benefit children, is the teachers of this country. They turned up in defiance of that open call. In defiance of that open call. And so if the question is, that we should put it on a website? That's a fair question. But don't come here to get some sexiness and some headlines and claim corruption, because you're accusing the people behind me who spend their whole life trying to serve you and have done a better job than you did when you were in office, honorable member. So we are not opposed. We are not opposed to putting all the names of recipients on a website. We have to make sure parents are comfortable with that, but philosophically we don't have an opposition to that. And we have to call on the private schools. We've already identified that publicly, that you will now have to keep registers. That's not a regulation right now, in the same manner and way, and submit perhaps quarterly reports of your attendance to the ministry so we could be more accountable. But that is, so $30,000 would be given, $30,000, 25 in the Because We Care cash grant, in addition to the school feeding that is being expanded, in addition to the buses and boats that we are continuing and expanding. $25,000 will be given to each child in this country, and $5,000 on the uniform program to each child. And Mr. Speaker, we believe that is going to help significantly parents with being able to come back, bring their children back to school. Sir, you just showed me your 2-minute pen, and there's so much that we can talk about in this sector.
You can get an extension of 5 minutes after.
Mr. Speaker, in an attempt to keep our children in school, we launched CAPE at Anna Regina and CAPE at West Demerara. A conversation we started in 2011 to 2015. Yesterday, for the first time in the history of this country, 9 high schools were registered under the Caribbean Vocational Qualification Program so that our children can go and get qualified at the CARICOM standard. Yesterday, we started that conversation in 2011 to 2015. Mr. Speaker, the lofty call by the Honorable Dawn Hastings, she's pleading for a high school because, Upper Mass needs a high school. It needed one in 2011. It needed one in 2012. We identified it. And it needed one in 2016, 17, 18, 19, and 20. But she wasn't there. And I don't want to get personal, but, she was closer to the seat of power and influence where that could have happened. We don't need power and influence. We're serving the children of this country, and Upper Mazaruni is going to get another secondary school, but not through this budget. We have identified resources for the acquisition of universal secondary education in this country. Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Member, now is a good time for someone to ask for that extension.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to ask for the Honourable Member to have 15 minutes more, but I know I have to follow the rules, and therefore I will ask for it to have 5 minutes to conclude.
Honorable Minister, you may continue to conclude.
If you agree, I'll ask for 15.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member stood there in her personal pain, which we must acknowledge, but that's a written speech. And that's deliberate. The Honourable Member stood there and said they trained and they want to see that continuing. Teachers at CPC and had some special program. When I came into the office in 2020, CPC was closed with no prospect of opening, no plan for opening. This year, CPC graduated its highest number of graduates ever, something that would not have been possible for any of those teachers. This budget provides $500+ million for us to go fully online with CPC. When we went fully online, sir, we were able to move our intake from 535 at its highest to 3,000, giving the Amerindian teachers all over this country the chance to get degrees in education and not just trained teacher certificate. We expect 100% trained or teachers in training by the time 2025. Mr. Speaker, I don't want to go into goal, but because I believe Honorable Minister Parag dealt with it. But for an honorable member of this House, and perhaps, sir, a philosophical debate for us to have is the importance of belonging to a party. You must have a constituency before you come here, or you will come and spend 10 minutes in some dream thinking you cleverly attacked the Speaker because you got some personal problem with the Speaker. The honorable member stands at the podium, accepts that she's had a scholarship from the government, does not deny that she's never completed the course that the Honorable Minister Parag leveled from the floor, does not deny that, but stands there and says, unless we could give people jobs, we mustn't train them. You clearly have a fundamental misunderstanding, the Honorable Member, with why people want training. There are teachers who already have jobs, but they want to better themselves. They want to better their understanding of their skill and craft, and they want to earn more for their family if they can. But the barefacedness of the thing, Mr. Speaker, is the bold-facedness of it, Mr. Speaker, is that the APNU AFC will come here having awarded themselves scholarships and not serving in the public sector, and I don't know where they're serving, and say, except people can serve back, they mustn't get the scholarship. How selfish. How selfish. We have 6,200 plus persons who benefit from GO last year, and another 4,500 who will benefit this year, and these are Guyanese citizens. And when you look at the spread across this country, it epitomizes equitable distribution of services. Epitomizes equitable distribution of service. Mr. Speaker, we cannot allow people who see before them no future in politics because of what they know was a damaging thing to have done following March 2nd. No future in this country's political life. Try to be a sour grape. Cut off your nose to spite your face. Robson Ben, the honorable member, called it a zero-sum game. We can't get people, we're going to broke it all up. We will not let you. The people of this country will not let you. So please understand that in this time, what we require for Guyana to move forward, if you say you love your supporters, what we require is a level of unity on purpose, that we want to see what is best for all our children. We might have different ways of doing it, and we could discuss that. But don't come here with nothing. I have heard nothing proper to criticize this budget, and I want to speak directly to teachers here before you give me the sign, sir. I thank you. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for turning up for this nation's children in a time when they needed it the most. And this was always going to require your best as a teacher and my best as a political leader and our best as a government. And I know you are looking too for leadership from the opposition. I thank the teachers who, in defiance of people they support, some of them, went out back to school, who in defiance of their union's call, went out back to school. I thank those teachers, and I want to say to you that never before in the history of the PPP's budgets or the APNU's budgets have increases for public service been defined. Never. It never comes in the budget. So when you have member after member standing here and saying nothing for public service, it's a lie. It's an untruth. It's a misrepresentation. It's playing on your emotions. Do not be misled. We always come at the end of the year and say what the increase will be. And the APNU AFC never listed in their budget what the increase for the next year would be. What they did, because they came with a budget in November and December, what they did was said what the increase for that year retroactively would be. So do not hoodwink, mislead, and be dishonest with people who are looking to you for leadership.
Honorable Minister, you'll have to withdraw hoodwink and mislead.
Do not tell the people something that is not true. I withdraw, hoodwink, and mislead. Don't tell public servants that they're not getting an increase because you will look foolish when they do. Don't tell public servants and teachers and nurses and discipline services that this has always been done when that is not true. You see, you become extremely incredible, hard to believe, when you stand here and say things that are easily verifiable as an untruth, as something that is not based in reality. I'm really trying hard to please you, sir, and not use bad words. So, Mr. Speaker, this is going to require of all of us our very best. And the opposition has a chance, it's not too late, has a chance to show love for the children of this country by supporting the 2022 budget, because collectively, and I quote here from the article that is laid over before this House, collectively, we need to make, collectively, parents, teachers, government, opposition, education ministry, education departments, we need to make education and learning a political and other priority. We must reopen schools, we must keep them open, and we must support learning recovery. We cannot afford to lose this generation of kids. Our future depends on it. I thank you, sir.